All right, tell me again. The one is a tapered.
So this is a taper. This is what Dan
Rosen
has on his. Not the Rosen. The Rosen's kind of drawn above the the angled one.
Yeah.
That one's like a self-centering screw. So it works great when you're taking impressions or when you're doing the opti split because it self-centers the scan body into it. But then you go through the whole process of manufacturing, right? Which you're introducing error. And you end up with the holes not aligning correctly. And the MUA is actually designed to take some of that inaccuracy into the hole. Yeah. So
into play on the ledge.
So this screw. So what you see here in the red is basically what the screw channel looks like. So your screw could actually move X and Y a little bit, so that you could kind of compensate for that inaccuracy that you're introducing either printing or milling, right?
Okay.
But when you're using a Rosen screw, you're assuming that everything fits perfectly passive. So if it doesn't, and you're actually, the Rosen screw channel is tighter because it uses the wall of the actual screw channel to engage on the lateral on the sides of the screw channel to actually come down and lock in, not a 90-degree seat like you see here.
Right. So
if you're not completely passive, you're putting lateral forces on one of the walls more than the other, because you don't have a chance for it to move X to Y. So then if you're just torquing it down, eventually one of those screws is gonna have a lot of lateral force on the screw channel wall, and that's why you get zirconia fractures.
Propagated fracture, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're persuading or pulling over.
And screw fractures.
Most importantly, screw fractures.
And screw fractures. So what about the one on the right, the flat? Better?
So that's what we've been using for 10 years and no complaints.
10 years?
Yes.
What about like Powerball? There's a Vortex.
So Powerball, I think, also uses a 90-degree seat platform. Powerball just has the ability to use angled screw channels. So it's the head of the screw that it's not.
The Powerball and Vortex screw are optimized for milling, to be able to mill angled screw channels. So those work really well when you want angled screw channels.
I thought the bottom of it was rounded though.
It is rounded.
So that there's a little bit
because
of.
The reason why it's rounded is not specifically for any like angled or like a Rosen screw is conical so that it gets friction as you're going down.
So
yeah.
The Powerball is not designed to get that friction. It's rounded so that it's easier to mill with a rounder, that connection.
Easier to mill it. Okay.
That stop.
How about the milling strategy?
So that's what Powerball and the Vortex screws are optimized for, milling strategies, more so than worrying about like this problem right here that we're talking about.
Yep.
And however, the Vortex screw does have some conical and self-centering kind of
like a taper.
Yeah, it does
taper
have
design.
a little bit of that.
Yep.
And so you do have to be a little bit careful with those to make sure that you're getting, you're getting it as accurately as possible. Like the data being acquired and the manufacturing that you're doing is going to have to be as accurate as possible. The Powerball screw, also because of the rounded corners, it's probably going to do that a little bit as well. But I guess my theory is, if you mill it the space a little bit bigger, it probably won't try to self-center with that milling burr. But then now the bigger problem with Powerball screw is the screw hole, because it's so big, is kind of big.
Okay.
So if you're around the occlusal surface,
you're going to get a bigger screw hole to deal with. Yeah. So everything has its pluses and minuses, right? It's not this is always better than this. I think there's the jury is still out on what screw really is best, because the problem that the desk screw has is that when you're using it on acrylic, it's going to cut into the acrylic as it goes down. So it's more likely to not have a good seat. It might break it if the acrylic's too soft.
Isn't that also harder to manufacture when you're in a mill for milling strategy to make a 90-degree
Correct.
turn inside
You
the
can't. Well,
prosthesis?
you can do it with a straight.
flat.
You have to mill that with a flat end burr, and it can be done. But when you're talking about an angled screw channel, you can't do that with that screw.
These aren't for angled screw channels though.
Can you make a flat like a desk and still have an angled screw access
So
hole?
it's to
Or can you
correct
angle a
deviation.
screw access
It's
hole?
If your
sort of
MUAs
possible, but the
aren't
problem
placed
is
in
getting the
ideal
screw into that angle and
location,
having the right
you
angle
could
on
actually
that.
move the.
in
You need a
that milling
space for
strategy.
driving.
Right, because the head is bigger,
I
so I have to be able to get that head around the corner
Yep.
when I get it down, and then how do I mill? I
Well, the
can't
power
mill
ball and all these
with
other
a
ones
flat
are straight to
screw
MUA as well.
thing
Okay.
from the top anymore because it's angled now, right?
That's
Now
why
you're
it's
using like a
power
ball
balls,
driver.
just because they're
Right.
long.
Right?
Well, but I
Okay.
can't mill the flat
So you're able to do
point
a thicker,
of the seat
You know, like,
from an angle, right? And
this
so
right here is.
I need to have another milling
right here.
strategy where I'm going up through the bottom and it has a T like drill or
Something that comes up
key
in
burr
and
to
rotates
mill that.
around?
Yeah.
The
So that's the
normal one,
only
your
way to
tibase
do
is
it,
only
and
25
not every
because
milling
it's metal.
system has that capability.
So,
Yeah.
Since you got
And
a longer
so
screw,
it is possible.
you know, you're
It's
able
just
to-
you have to have the
you're
right
able to have a larger
stuff
seat.
and to know how to do it. And it's a lot more difficult than say the vortex screw or the Powerball screw because in those they're designed to be able to mill from the top an angled screw channel and still have a seat for you to work with. So everything has its advantage. I think the desk screw, the two disadvantages is that like it's harder to get that preload for the screw to be
Longer than the
Yeah, like by a millimeter.
like tight and
Yeah.
not loosen. And
that
then
is
also,
what
if there's a
you
vertical
ability to
offset,
go
because the
direct.
screw is long, if there's a
Correct.
vertical
Okay.
offset.
Because
on
you're able
the
to have a
prosthesis,
thicker,
you're not going to
you're able
detect
to have more material here
that
to
vertical offset.
avoid this
It's just going to feel
breaking out
passive either way.
when you screw it down.
Okay.
Okay.
So those are the things I would say is not perfect about desk screws. No angle screw channels.
So then are we trying to come up with something that's a tweener? Something that still has a little bit of an angle?
I think we have one.
I think everybody's trying to figure out, what kind of screw would work best.
What is best?
Yeah. And I think some of it is like, the Vortex screw, what they did well was they released their screw with the milling strategy, right? So if you have a screw, if it's a flathead screw, you have to have a milling strategy for angled, right? And you have to design it so it can be actually used with a T, and then you have to work with whatever mills that have the ability to
Right.
mill with that.
Is there any manufacturing in lab that has that kind of functionality with a T or a tool?
I believe like the Alman Gerbach, whatever they have a T tool. I've seen it. I believe IMS iCore has a T tool as well. You just have to be able to program the milling strategy to include that as part of that. You can't just hand over the screw and expect every lab to have the ability to create that milling strategy on their own.
Right.
That's the problem.
Huh.
Otherwise, every lab's gonna have to figure it out. Right? Like, how do I mill this?
Right.
And most labs don't have that capability.
But with an angled screw channel, the driver that you use for an angled screw channel, the intimacy of the driver and the head of the screw is not as good as with straight one.
It's not, but it's just a matter of getting whatever torque rating you need to get, right?
Yeah. But if who's ever placing these, because I've heard a lot of, might as well just do all of them angled screw channels so you got perfect screw channels all the time. But then you're running the risk of stripping a screw if you're not all the way down, which is more of a possibility with an angled screw channel than with a straight.
That makes
And
sense.
what's the data on like screw loosening with angle screw channels? Because you're not going to be able to put.
Well, you could still torque them down to the 15, but you just have to make sure whoever's torquing it down has to make sure that if you're feeling that thing slipping, there's probably something down in that screw channel. You have to make sure that you irrigate it and get it out so that your driver goes down
Well,
all
the
the way.
question is, does 15 Newton centimeters give you preload on your screw?
Which preload?
Preload is the stretching of the screw.
Oh.
That's going to keep it from loosening.
From
right?
losing it back and then
Yeah. So you need preload on the screw when you torque it.
and then you have to wait for a little bit and then do it again, right?
Well, maybe not necessarily. Like it's you have to have a little bit of stretching of the metal material in order for it to know that it's not going to loosen again, right? You don't always have to have it to make sure it's not going to loosen again, but that's going to do a better job of ensuring that it won't.
So
And
you want it to.
right. So on the question is,
Don't they treat the screws with like a oily, viscous material or like a liquid to help preload
some
them?
companies do.
Yeah.
I don't know every one that does, right? So that's the other question is like, you know, can we, like, whose screws are those, right? And do they have an angled option for it?
Yeah.
And it has to come with that study of, you know, this is enough torque on this screw to create that preload, right? But then if you can create preload at 15 Newton centimeters, is that screw strong enough? Is the question too. Because usually a screw is being tightened on an abutment to an implant at 35 Newton centimeters, and that's definitely creating preload.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that 15 is, ever, on any titanium screw.
Okay.
Is 15 the recommendation for most of these screws?
Most prosthetic screws, yeah.
No,
So
they
you're
have
kind
to
of
be.
dependent on, you know, the design of the screw. I think what Cliff is talking about, where there's some kind of lubricating surface on the screw, when you tighten it so that it'll actually go further at the same rating and the strength of the screw is still there, that's going to give you a better chance at getting that preload and less chance of screw loosening. But screw loosening is nearly, because they're like, when it's titanium on most, how it's been, right? Tibases, bars, things like that. When you tighten it at 15 centimeters, and it's multiple across all the different things, screw loosening really isn't much of an issue, right? So that's why 15 centimeters has been fine. But we don't know if that's still true for zirconia.
Holding down a frame.
Go direct without tie.
Yeah.
For zirconia, because
Right.
we don't know that titanium on zirconia has the same friction as titanium on titanium, right?
Are you familiar with yours? No. So they use a 5.0 MUA opposed to a 4.8, and their screw is actually thicker. And
Oh, the titanium, yeah, Urus, yeah. So you can use, but again, if your screw is thicker, it's gonna require more torque in order to get preload on it, right? And that's the I mean, they're stronger.
Well, I mean, if
and-
they're stronger, can you
Say
go to 20?
Yes, but you have to create. I mean, 20 is 20 enough for a 1.6 screw, or a 2 millimeter screw?
I mean, if it's beefier, I guess I would think it screws on better, right?
It screws on better, but it doesn't have that preload to keep it from loosening.
Yeah, I used to use those, and I felt like those things were under. I used to torque them.
They're not going to break, but they're, yeah, and you can maybe torque it higher. I guess that's the whole thing. It's like, and then how would you do that for an angled screw channel? You're not going to get 25 newtons of torque on an angled screw channel. That's going to be really hard
because of the head.
because the thread is too thick and strong now, right?
And you're not directly applying the force
Yeah.
anymore.
So it's harder to get the same torque on it now.
But jury's not out. We're not sure which design up here.
I can't,
We're figuring this out as we
yeah,
go.
there's still, the jury is still very much out.
If you had to
on-
pick one or the other, you had to go angled or you had to go with a flat. At the
Well,
moment.
For me, price comes into
Okay,
comes
forget
into play
price.
as well.
Forget it. I'm just talking about mechanically. What do you have the best chance of success holding that frame down?
Get better at picking your MUA so that you can use straight.
Right. And then your prosthesis design from the beginning, getting your screw channel where it has to be, and not relying on just.
No, I want the
easy-
screw channel.
The easy exit.
I want the
easy
channel
exit
straight
with
up and down. I just want to have.
If
I want
price
to
were
pick
not
one
an
of those two
issue-
screws. No, price is not an
Price
issue.
are not an issue today. In terms of just technical design,
Yep.
I would take the Vortex screw.
The Vortex.
Yes.
So it's got a little bit of a taper, not as much as a Rosen,
Correct.
but it doesn't have a flat bottom to it, does
And
it?
it has critically, it
They're
has
cleaning up, putting stuff away.
critically it has the
assistants, they want
the
that
milling
MUA
strategies that go
and
with it,
just
the
like
hyperdent milling
identify,
strategies that go with
I
it.
guess, with
Okay.
trash.
So
If you had a milling
cheaper-
strategy with it, that's what I
Okay.
mean.
Yeah.
You,
So if
Jerry
you have
wants
a,
downstairs for a sec.
if you're a lab that wants to implement the Vortex screw, that's a lot easier to do because it comes with the milling strategy.
It's only available in Hyperdent?
I don't
Right.
know if it's only available on Hyperdent, but I know, I mean, Hyperdent's the most common, you know,
Thank you, boys.
billing software out there.
Good chat. This has been going on for a while.
But if I were to, but for me, if it was, I mean, there is a price thing, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we all care about how much things cost, right? And if you include that part of it, you know, the desk screw works fine, and it has been working for a long time, and people have been using it for a long time. At, you know, the price that they're selling it at, it's a much better, you know,
What are they selling it at?
like $9
Yeah.
on retail, and you can get it for as low as like $6 or $7.
What's a Vortex?
A Vortex, I think starting is 20 to 25.
Powerball?
Powerball's around the same, 30-ish.
30. Rosen.
Rosen, I think, is 15.
Okay.
I believe, because it's 500.
But Vortex is the only one you get a milling strategy with it if you ask for it. It's right on their website or something.
Correct. No, you have to buy the screw to get the milling strategy.
Okay.
Yeah. So those are, it's free, I know that, but you have to get the screws, like a certain number of screws. To get the
Yeah.
strategy.
Okay.
So that's, you know,
Any other screws out? Off the top of your
I
heads.
don't know of any.
Nobel has one.
I mean, well, how's a prosthetic screw?
No, they have a screw that they're using direct.
That's their normal prosthetic screw because that's milling
Oh.
because they're milling their normal Nobel seat into their zirconia.
WTI has an angled screw channel screw. I think it's called Gen 30. I wouldn't be able to tell you any.
Yeah, I don't know
about
the
it.
details about it. And it's not-
Camille, I think Camille designed it, and he gets it manufactured, and you know, he has the libraries for Exocad to design the screw channel, obviously. But you know
But he has a screw.
that's a Camille.
What's his called?
Gen 30.
I don't think I've ever heard of it.
I think only our clients that get stuff from us, we recommend them to them when they need an angled screw channel.
Okay.
But I don't think he has it out like that.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Cool. All right, boys.